US President Donald Trump's tariffs on India, they have kicked in. A range of Indian goods now exported to America will face 50% duties, doubling an existing duty as President Trump sought to punish New Delhi for buying Russian oil. The new tariff includes 25% taxes plus a 25% penalty that penalizes India for buying Russian oil directly or indirectly. Nearly half of India's exports will be hit by this 50% tariff. Crucially, exemptions remain for sectors that could be hit with separate levies like pharmaceuticals and computer chips. Trump has slapped fresh duties on allies and competitors alike since returning to the presidency in the month of January this year. But the 50% level is among the highest that US trading partners face. The new tariff is expected to impact India's $87 billion worth of goods exports to the US. And this is a figure from just last year, 2024. Key affected sectors include garments, they include leather goods, gems and jewelry, and petrochemicals. The US runs a $45.7 billion trade deficit with India, and Trump has been pressing for greater access to India's agricultural and dairy markets. Indian negotiators have resisted that demand, citing risks to millions of farmers. On the other hand, US exports to India may now face retaliatory measures. India exports manufactured goods and energy like LNG and crude oil worth $42 billion. New Delhi has criticized Washington's move as unfair, unjustified, unreasonable. And the Indian Prime Minister has delivered a clear message to the countrymen: make in India, spend in India. Prime Minister Modi pushed for vocal for local vision, declaring that India would step up its strength no matter how much the pressure.
आत्मनिर्भर भारत के अभियान को हम सब आगे बढ़ाएं, वोकल फॉर लोकल बने, स्वदेशी ये हमारा जीवन मंत्र बनना चाहिए दोस्तों.
New Delhi is also speeding up policy changes such as overhaul and simplification of the Goods and Services Tax (GST), and this is to shore up confidence and growth in the economy. The government aims to reduce compliance costs for firms, abolish redundant laws and simplify tax rules. And to discuss this further, I am now being joined live by Jayant Krishna. Mr. Krishna is from New Delhi. He's a senior fellow at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Krishna, thanks so much for joining me here on Newspoint. India hasn't bowed down. India is still buying Russian oil. Trump's tariffs, his ultimatums, they continue. A lot of the world leaders aren't really paying too much heed to everything Trump says anymore. But this fact still remains that there are now 50% tariffs on Indian products going into the US. What's the path forward? Nobody's budging at this point. What happens next?
Hey, Shivan, to my mind, it's first of all, it's very unfortunate because US happens to be India's second largest trading partner and the only major country with whom we have a trade surplus in favor of India. You know, and not only that, I think the maximum amount of FDI that we get from any country is the US, and that has been the pattern, the trend in the last few years, you know. So I think some sectors which are excluded from this 50% tariff are, some of the bulk drugs in the pharma sector, smartphones, electronics, chips, and so on and so forth. If you keep those things aside, I would feel that out of a total, export India does to the US of about $70 to $80 billion, at least half of it will be very badly hit, because 50% is a huge tariff, and no amounts of margins to be adjusted and so on and so forth will be able to, offset the impact of 50% tariff, So I think this loss will come. And I think the way forward is, we have to step up negotiations. Whatever we may say, I don't think retaliatory tariff will help India at all. Or, picking up the word of wars with US. I don't think it blends with the character of Indian diplomacy. So I don't think we should do that. But I think a few things are being done. For example, rather than a huge dependence on the American market for Indian exports, I think India has gone ahead and signed free trade agreements, at least the interim version with Australia, the final FTA with the UK, with the United Arab Emirates, with Oman, and discussions are underway at advanced stage with European Union also, which is the second largest market for India, right? After the US. And also with the change of regime in Canada, I mean, discussions have started with for FTA. So I think India has to broad base its export base. I mean, not that we are not exporting to these countries, but we have to step up our export efforts in those countries. That's one thing. And some of the domestic reforms have also been announced. The way I see it, Shivan, I think this should be an opportunity for big ticket reforms. One reform which government has already announced, it has to go through, the approval cycle and so on and so forth, is the GST slab rationalization. I think that is very, very important. We know that we have 4 GST slabs of 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. And those are being changed to 5% and 18%. And almost 99% of the goods which are currently in the 12% GST bracket will transition to 5%. And almost 90% of the goods currently in the 28% slab will come to 18%. So I have a feeling this will be a very, very big stimulus for domestic demand to go up. And products, which I can straight away, rattle off our...
Mr. Krishna, let me just come in there quickly. As far as the exports are concerned with the US, and as you mentioned rightly, it's a huge market for India. And there's no denying the fact that it is going to be a setback if people in the US, they stop buying or there is a reduction. What are the possible avenues now? You did mention briefly the free trade agreements with several other countries, different parts of the world. But the real avenues where India can bifurcate, or will India just have to get into a negotiation with the US and figure this one out? Or can India look elsewhere to make up for the losses that may occur in the US market now?
I think looking elsewhere, I just described about the FTAs signed with other countries or in the process of being signed. India, I fundamentally believe India has to have a far greater economic integration with China also, right? It is in interest of, I mean, it's a controversial issue because people say, can China be trusted? But I fundamentally believe if we have a greater integration with the Chinese economy, the Indian economy's integration with the Chinese economy, I think even our geopolitical and border issues will become much easier to be sorted out. So I think my impression is that China is more open and more game to transfer technologies rather than do manufacturing in India in a manner that dependence on China continues vis-a-vis US if I compare. So I think I would feel that is very, very important, and of course through and let it be an opportunity for big time reforms, land reforms, labor reforms.
Understood.
How do you rejuvenate our cities? So I think this is a 1991 kind of a situation. It may not be that grim, but the fact is, when we are faced with these kind of a tariff situation, we have to look at a lot of big ticket reforms and even remove some of the non-tariff barriers which India has, right? So I think those are very, very important and good opportunities the way I see it, Shivan.
Yeah, but when India looks towards China, definitely India cannot ignore the great deal of mistrust that has existed, and because of the poor history and the recent history, which has also not been strong, it has just about started to thaw since the last 10 months, since Kazan. We'll need to wait and watch how this happens. Modi will be in China soon enough, and can China be the answer to the losses in US? That's a huge question. India will need to figure its way out of this one. But as of now, no one's really budging. And let's figure out how this one goes forward. That was Mr. Jayant Krishna joining me here on Newspoint. Thanks so much for joining me, sir.
Pleasure.
Yeah.